Hey guys, Dan here, and I want to share some personal things in this video and address the topic of big change and taking a risk and really putting your back up against the wall, if you will. Ever since I can remember, I've been encouraging people to do this. I can remember back in Vancouver over a decade ago going on a date with this girl, and the date didn't go anywhere fun, but it did lead to her quitting her job and starting her business and all that sort of thing. I've always encouraged people to go for their dreams and take a big risk. And in my own life, and I want to share some of those details about the risks I've taken in my own life, but in my own life, that's what I have done a lot. And here I am, with this audience talking to you now, and whether or not you know it, I do a lot of work one-on-one and with group training with aspiring entrepreneurs, and with ENFPs and other people about their personality type and living a better life and all that sort of thing. And sometimes I find it harder now to give people that real push in terms of taking a massive risk and making a big change. And it's not that I don't end up encouraging them to do it, but I find that on my end, I hear this, old Canadian play it safe, retire voice sometimes, where it's someone else taking that risk. Where when it's me, I like, just go for it, whatever. Worst case, I'll become a male prostitute in Costa Rica, figure it out. I didn't, for the record, at least not for that long. 20 bucks is 20 bucks. But when you're advising someone else, it's like a responsibility you take on. And I guess that's why I'm filming this, is I want to put it out there, my own risks I've taken, and bring that into sort of the conversation, if you will. So long story short, and then we'll have a long story long, is I've never had a safety net. When we go back to kind of my entrepreneurial journey and my location independent, live around the world journey, looking at about a decade here that's been going on. When I started copywriting, so the last year I was in Canada, I had no money. And I told the story before. The reason I started it is I had no money. I owed a friend some money that he had lent me, being the angel he is, and he'd said, okay, well, you haven't paid me back in a while, and I'm managing this bar, and we need someone basically to clean the toilets. Like, I was the assistant to the bartender. And I was, in my mid-20s at this point, and the assistant to the assistant bartender was like 19. And all the people from college that I knew came into the bar that night as well, so that was really awesome. I did that for 2 nights, and it actually wasn't too bad. There's a really cute bartender, we kind of got along, that was nice. But nonetheless, at the end of it, I got sick, I was exhausted, and I made a couple $100 bucks. I was like, this is not how I can really live. This is a terrible way to be doing it. So I decided I would start copywriting and jumped right in, put up a note on Facebook, got a few clients early on, and just started doing it. And the whole time, I would decide whether or not I ate based on getting clients and getting business. And that was pretty much my whole first year of copywriting. There were some ups, like some $3,000-$4,000, if I'm remembering right at least, contracts. But generally those were few and far between, and it was like struggling. And whatever I earned is how I afforded to keep living and all that. There was no, safety net with any of it. Then I decided I had to make a change and I had to do something different. This wasn't working. I was massively stressed. If you've seen the video I made on the ENFP dark side, that's where I first came across that, where I was just like overly stressed, accusing my friends of some conspiracy theories and all this sort of stuff. And I knew I needed to make a change and decided I would make this move to Costa Rica. And I can't claim to remember all the details of my thought process at the time. I'm probably reimagining some of it, right? Our memories are pretty flawed as people. But basically I decided I need to do this one way or the other. And if I keep waiting until I have the money or things are perfect, it's just not going to ever happen. So I bought a ticket that got me to New York, and then from New York, I think I got that on points. And then from New York, I bought a one-way ticket to Costa Rica and had a 4-6 week window, something like that, between when I bought it and when I would go. And I just thought, hey, I'll find a way to make it work. And I sold some furniture and some things before I left. I had a couple nice stereos I bought and things like that. So by the time I got to Costa Rica, I had about $2,000, $2,500, something like that, if I remember right. If anyone really cares, you can hack my bank account and find the records. But I think it was something like that. And got to Costa Rica and that was it. Like, that was the money I had. If I survived or not was based on getting clients and making it happen. And the thing is, in this particular case, and this video is going off on a tangent, but you could kind of tell from the beginning it was just going to be like a Dan talk video, and that's what we're doing. So when I got there, I realized Costa Rica was way more expensive than I thought it would be. Like, you're thinking, yeah, Costa Rica, it'll be cheap, but live on a few $100s. Like, my rent, when I finally found a place, was like $1,000 or $1,200 US dollars a month. It was more than what I'd been paying in Canada. And a lot of food and groceries and that was not cheap. Ultimately though, despite some stress, I made it work. And actually my income went way up. And then I moved to New York and yada, yada, yada. 7 years later, here I am still living abroad, living in Europe. And the thing is it worked, I think, partly because I did have my back up against the wall, because I did have to make it work. And when I think back, like the what if, on one hand, you could say like, wow, it was a really big risk. Like, I had no extra savings. I went down there. So many things could have went wrong. Maybe. But even looking back, I'm like, what's the worst that really would have happened? I ran out of money. I was totally screwed. I either sucked it up and got a job somewhere down there at like a hostel or as a tour guide or doing something, or begged someone back home to send me money and flew back home. Okay, it still wouldn't have been the end of the world. It wouldn't have been that bad. You know, it can look like it will be the end of the world when we're doing these things, but the way I always looked at it is, okay, if I make this move, you know, maybe I end up like in debt. In that case, it would have been end up in more debt. But maybe I end up in debt, or maybe I missed some kind of income I could have made. Maybe I don't, right? But it's probably still better than the regret of going, or of not going for it, I should say, right? The regret of thinking, oh, yeah, remember that time? And the funny thing is, when I was going to make that move, I was supposed to do it with a friend, and we were going to share an apartment down in Costa Rica and that kind of thing. And I haven't been in touch with him a lot recently. I have no clue what his life is doing. I'm sure it's amazing or whatever else. But what I do know is he kind of bailed at the last minute, and that's what he really wanted as well, was to go live somewhere awesome and be location independent. And as far as I know, is still kind of living in his hometown and all that. And I don't know. Again, I haven't been in touch, but there's probably some regrets there on his end as well. And that was one of the things that always drove me, is giving value to regret when you're working out that equation. So if I'm looking at, okay, worst case scenario, if I go for it, okay, you know, a week of prostitution in Central America, whatever it happens to be, beg some friends for money, come home, get it. On the other hand is, if I don't go for it, sometimes it's hard to quantify that, because we're like, yeah, if I don't go for it, life just stays the same. It's kind of okay, and it's a little boring, and I'm stressed or I'm unhappy. But on top of that, I like to add the regret. Like, I like to do that whole Braveheart, grandparent in the wheelchair exercise, not wheelchair, rocking chair exercise, where you're looking back at your life and saying like, what would I really have wanted to do? If I'm looking back, what would I prefer I did? And whenever I did that, there was never a time when I looked back and said like, definitely when I'm 80, looking back on my life, I would say, yeah, I wish I had just stayed put and taken the safe route when I was, 27, 28. That's what your 20s are for, taking the safe route. So glad I kept at that job I didn't like or whatever. Like, it's not gonna happen. And so I always like that. Now, this whole point of the video when I started it, again, this is a little throwback to some of the videos I first was putting up on YouTube. Totally not thought out, just like, hey, I'm gonna turn on a camera. But the original point when I turned it on was to talk about not having that safety net and getting into that story there. And the truth is, that was not the only time. Many times when I've made big moves, I have not had a safety net. Some people talk about, okay, I'm gonna go for it when I have 12 months of living expenses in the bank and all that. And that might be the right move for you, but it may not be. Personally, on the coach end, as I've worked with more and more people, more times than not, having a big safety net, kind of being able to step in and out of a job, like, okay, I'm gonna try my own business, and after 2 months, if it's not going really well, then I'm gonna go get a job. I haven't really seen that work out for people. Whereas not having a safety net and just going for it to make it work tends to get better results from what I have seen. Here's really the bottom line with it. is whatever it is you're thinking of doing that you want to do, if you go for it, you're going to be better off no matter what. Maybe you'll hit the wall and it will totally fail, and I've had that happen plenty of times. But when that happens, you're going to learn something. You're going to be closer to where you want to be. And usually it's not nearly as bad as we think it is. You know, if you're someone who's debating between like leaving a job first and doing your own thing, you can go back to the job. If it's not a job that you really like that much and it doesn't pay you millions of dollars a year, it's probably not going to be hard to find that job again a year from now. So what are you really risking by going for it and doing your own thing? Not a lot, at least by the math and at least not emotionally. It might suck and it might be super stressful for a little bit, but I'll tell you, when you go for it, it will be exciting. It will be actually fun more times than not. And it will be something like you're never going to regret doing it. And that's if it doesn't work. If it does work, well, we know where that goes, right? You take that risk, you get rewarded for it, and you end up creating a life that you actually want. Probably not going to regret that either. The main thing I want to share here is just with my own experience, I never had that safety net. I never had kind of a plan B. I love that Will Smith quote, "Why have a plan B? It distracts from plan A." I never have a plan B. It's so true for me in my own life. And sometimes when I'm maybe in the comments with people on that, I might play it a little safe because I almost feel this responsibility. Like I don't want to push people too much to just like jump into something if it really might be disastrous. But what I realized reflecting on it is, in my own life, that was the only way I ever succeeded at things. And most of the time it works out for people when they really go for it, do things right, and give it a chance. And when I've done it, I've never had that safety net. I've never had that plan B. Take that into account when you're making your own decisions. I do realize as well that when you're coming to me, whether it's in the comments or working with me as a coach, you're probably working with me because you do want someone to say, you can do it, take the risk. You know, if you wanted someone to tell you to play it safe and sit back and never go for it, then you would probably not work with me. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, all that kind of good stuff. And thanks for putting up with the rambly, long, just, kind of video. Catch you in the next one soon.